There is a number that most people who feel financially stressed never think about. It is not their salary. It is not their credit score. It is the gap between what comes in and what must go out before they have any choice in the matter. In 2024, median household income in the United States sits at roughly $75,000 per year. That translates to about $6,250 per month before taxes. After federal and state taxes, the average household takes home somewhere between $4,500 and $5,200 monthly, depending on state and filing status. And yet, survey after survey, from the Federal Reserve's annual report on household economic well-being to studies by the American Payroll Association, consistently finds that between 55% and 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. These are not people earning minimum wage. These are households earning $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 per year who would struggle to absorb a $1,000 unexpected expense without going into debt. That is the paradox of modern financial instability. The income is there. The stability is not. To understand why, you have to look at three converging forces that have fundamentally changed the relationship between income and financial security over the past 2 decades. The first is inflation versus wage growth. Between 2020 and 2023, cumulative inflation in the United States ran approximately 18% to 20%, depending on the category of goods. Wages, while they grew, especially in lower income brackets, did not uniformly keep pace with housing, food, energy, and health care. The result is that a household earning $65,000 in 2020 needed to earn closer to $77,000 by 2023 just to maintain the same purchasing power. Many did not. Their income grew, but their real income, what that money actually bought, shrank. The second force is housing cost escalation. In the majority of metropolitan areas where most working professionals live, housing costs, whether rent or mortgage payments, have consumed an increasingly large share of take-home pay. In 2015, a median price home in a major U.S. metro area might have required a mortgage payment equal to 25% to 28% of gross income. By 2024, that same calculation, accounting for elevated home prices and higher interest rates, often runs 35% to 45% of gross income. For renters, median rents in many cities have increased 30% to 50% since 2019. The same dollar of income is carrying far more fixed cost weight than it used to. The third force is lifestyle inflation, the gradual and often unconscious expansion of spending as income grows. When someone earns a raise, the natural tendency is not to save the difference. It is to upgrade, a slightly better apartment, a newer car, more subscriptions, more dining, more convenient spending. Each of these individually feels reasonable. Collectively, they eliminate the financial buffer that higher income was supposed to create. The result is a specific and measurable condition, structural financial fragility. You can define it with 4 indicators. First, no meaningful emergency savings, typically defined as less than 1 month of expenses in liquid cash. Second, fixed monthly obligations, rent or mortgage, car payments, minimum debt payments, insurance, consuming more than 55% to 60% of net income. Third, dependence on the next paycheck to cover current obligations, meaning a gap in income of even 2 weeks would create immediate financial difficulty. And fourth, debt balances that are growing, not shrinking over time. This is a financial condition that most people in this income range are actually living in, even if they do not identify it that way. They may have a 401k. They may have a reasonable salary. But structurally, their finances have almost no resilience, no ability to absorb disruption without serious consequences. The conventional financial advice offered to people in this situation tends toward complexity. Build a diversified investment portfolio. Optimize your tax strategy. Refinance your debt. Track every expense in the budgeting app. These recommendations are not wrong. Exactly. But they address secondary problems while leaving the primary problem untouched. The primary problem is not the absence of an optimal financial strategy. It is the presence of a fragile financial structure. Structure determines outcomes before strategy even gets a chance to operate. If your fixed costs are too high, budgeting more carefully is a marginal improvement. If you have no cash buffer, Investing in index funds does not help you when a medical bill arrives. If your income has no redundancy, career disruption becomes a financial emergency regardless of how well you are tracking your spending. This is what the minimalist approach to money addresses directly, not optimization. Structure. Minimalism in financial terms does not mean deprivation. It means reducing the number of financial decisions that require active management and replacing them with a small set of structural rules that operate automatically and consistently. The psychological basis for this approach is well established. Decision fatigue, the deterioration of decision quality after a long session of decision-making, is a real phenomenon. Financial decisions are made continuously throughout a month. What to spend, what to save, what to pay first, what to defer. Each of these micro-decisions draws on the same cognitive resources as any other decision. The more financial decisions you must make consciously, the more likely that some of those decisions will be suboptimal, especially under stress. Rules eliminate this problem. When saving is automatic, you do not decide whether to save this month. When your fixed cost ratio is a rule rather than a hope, you do not negotiate with yourself about whether the new apartment is within your budget. The rule answers the question before the question arises. The second principle is that a small number of correctly chosen rules creates comprehensive protection. Financial instability generally arises from a limited set of causes: inadequate reserves, excessive fixed costs, income concentration, and uncontrolled debt. If your financial structure addresses all four of these at the structural level, the vast majority of financial disruptions become manageable rather than catastrophic. What follows are 8 rules that, applied consistently, create exactly that structure. The standard advice you will encounter is to maintain 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. That standard was established decades ago and reflects a different labor market and a different economy. 3 months of expenses is insufficient protection against the actual financial risks that working professionals face today. Consider the math. The average job search duration in the United States as of recent years has been approximately 20 to 24 weeks for professional-level positions. 3 months is 13 weeks. A 3-month emergency fund does not cover an average job search, let alone a longer one. 6 months covers most scenarios. 12 months converts a potential catastrophe into an inconvenience. Here is what this looks like with numbers. A household with $4,000 per month in necessary expenses, rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, needs $24,000 to have 6 months of coverage and $48,000 for 12 months. These are large numbers, and accumulating them takes time. But the math of not having them is worse. A household with no emergency fund that loses income for 3 months may need to carry $12,000 in high-interest credit card debt to survive that period. At 22% APR, that debt costs $2,640 per year, just in interest, indefinitely, if only minimums are paid. The emergency fund does not just protect against job loss. It protects against medical expenses, home repairs, car failures, family emergencies, and the dozens of other unpredictable financial events that reliably occur over any multi-year period. What most people do instead is maintain a nominal buffer, perhaps $1,000 to $2,000, and rely on credit cards for the rest. That approach converts every unexpected expense into debt, and debt into a permanent drag on monthly cash flow. Build towards 6 months first. Keep this money in a high-yield savings account, not invested in equities, because you cannot afford to need it during a market downturn. Once you reach 6 months, reassess based on your career stability, health situation, and income structure. Fixed costs are the expenses you owe regardless of what happens in your life: rent or mortgage, car payment, insurance, minimum debt payments, subscriptions you cannot easily cancel, any expense with a fixed monthly obligation that persists whether you work or not. The rule is simple. These costs in aggregate must not exceed 50% of your monthly net income, not gross income. Net income, what you actually take home after taxes, and any mandatory deductions. For a household taking home $5,000 per month, that means total fixed obligations cannot exceed $2,500. This leaves $2,500 for variable spending, saving, and investing. At this ratio, a 30-day gap in income, a bridge between jobs, a delayed freelance payment, a temporary disability, can be absorbed without immediately defaulting on obligations. What happens when fixed costs are too high? Consider a household earning $5,000 net with $3,200 in fixed costs, a 64% fixed cost ratio, which is common in high-cost cities. After fixed costs, they have $1,800 for food, transportation, clothing, and savings. There's essentially no room for savings, no tolerance for unexpected expenses, and the household is structurally fragile regardless of how carefully they track their spending. The consequence of exceeding this threshold is not just tightness in a given month. It is that the household has almost no financial degrees of freedom. They cannot meaningfully redirect money towards savings or debt reduction without going without something essential. The financial structure itself precludes improvement. If your fixed cost ratio exceeds 50%, the priority action is structural. Reduce fixed costs, not variable spending. A less expensive apartment, a paid-off car rather than a lease, refinance debt at a lower payment. These structural changes have compounding effects. A $300 reduction in monthly fixed costs creates $3,600 per year in additional financial flexibility indefinitely. The behavioral finance literature is unambiguous on this point. When saving is manual, it is discretionary. When saving is automated, it happens regardless of the state of your willpower, your stress level, or your assessment of whether this particular month is a good month to save. The mechanism is straightforward. On the day you receive income, an automatic transfer moves a defined amount to a savings or investment account. Whatever remains is what you have to spend. The saving is not negotiated with monthly expenses. It is removed from the pool before spending begins. The math of consistent saving, even at moderate rates, is significant. Consider saving $500 per month, beginning at age 30, in a high-yield savings account earning 4.5% annually. That accumulates to approximately $75,000 in 10 years. In an index fund investment account averaging 7% annual returns, the same $500 per month grows to approximately $86,000 over 10 years and over $260,000 over 25 years. The return on the saving is not the primary variable for financial stability. The consistency of the saving is. What most people do instead is save what is left at the end of the month. The predictable result is that nothing is left at the end of the month. Spending expands to fill available income, a well-documented behavioral pattern. Automation inverts this sequence and makes savings structurally guaranteed rather than behaviorally dependent. A pay increase is not a signal to expand fixed costs. It is an opportunity to accelerate the accumulation of financial stability. This distinction is the difference between households that achieve financial security and those that perpetually feel one income disruption away from crisis, regardless of how much their salaries grow. The pattern is consistent. A professional earning $55,000 receives a promotion to $70,000, a $15,000 increase, approximately $1,000 more per month after taxes. Within 6 months, they have a nicer apartment, plus $400/month, a new car payment, plus $350/month, and an expanded lifestyle, plus $200/month. The raise has been absorbed entirely by new fixed costs. Their savings rate has not changed. Their financial resilience has not changed. Only their required income has increased. The rule is to redirect at least 50% of any net income increase to saving or debt reduction for a minimum of 6 months before considering lifestyle upgrades. A $1,000 monthly increase in net income allocated at 50% means $500 per month in additional saving, $6,000 per year, before any lifestyle expansion occurs. Over time, this rule creates a widening gap between what your lifestyle requires and what your income provides. That gap is financial resilience. It is a structural space that allows you to weather disruption, take professional risks, and eventually reach a point where work is optional rather than mandatory. Income concentration is a structural risk. A household with a single source of income, one salary, from one employer, has 100% of its financial stability dependent on one variable remaining stable. Given that average job tenure in the United States is approximately 4 years, and that economic disruptions, Industry contractions and organizational restructurings occur regularly. This is a significant structural fragility. Multiple income paths do not require running a business or working excessive hours. They include skills that can be freelance even occasionally, investment income, interest from savings, dividends from index funds. That begins modest and grows over time, rental income as circumstances allow, and professional expertise that can be converted into consulting, teaching, or advisory work. The financial impact of even a modest secondary income is disproportionate to its size. A household that generates $500 per month from freelance work or investment income has effectively reduced its dependence on primary employment by that amount. If primary income is interrupted, the secondary income buys time and reduces the burn rate on emergency savings. If primary income is stable, the secondary income accelerates savings accumulation. The goal is not to replace primary income. It is to ensure that no single event can entirely eliminate household income. That structural change alone significantly reduces financial risk. Debt is not inherently destabilizing. Debt that is properly sized relative to income and that is declining over time is a normal feature of financial life. Debt that is growing, either in absolute balance or as a percentage of income, is a structural threat. The rule is simple to measure. If your total non-mortgage debt balance is higher at the end of the year than it was at the beginning, and your income has not increased proportionally, your financial structure is deteriorating. Credit card balances that roll month to month, personal loans that expand, student loan balances that grow due to deferment, all of these represent negative financial momentum. Consider the math of carrying $8,000 in credit card debt at 22% APR. The minimum payment on this balance is approximately $160 per month. Over 24 months of paying only the minimum, the balance declines to approximately $6,200. But $2,400 in payments have been made, of which roughly $1,600 went to interest and only $800 reduce the principal. Simultaneously, this $160 per month is unavailable for saving. Over those same 24 months, $160 per month invested at 7% annual return would have grown to approximately $4,100. The debt does not just cost interest. It costs the opportunity value of money that could have been building wealth. The structural rule is that all consumer debt, credit cards, personal loans, auto loans beyond the vehicle's working life, should be on a defined payoff schedule. The exact timeline depends on balance and interest rate, but the direction must always be down. The evidence on market timing is extensive and consistent. It does not work reliably for anyone over any sustained period, including professionals whose full-time occupation is investing. What does work reliably and demonstrably is consistent investment regardless of market conditions. This approach, investing a fixed amount at regular intervals regardless of market price, is called dollar-cost averaging. Its structural advantage is that it removes the emotional decision from the investment process. You do not need to assess whether this is a good time to invest. The schedule answers that question automatically. The mathematics validate this. An investor who contributed $400 per month to a broad market index fund from 2000 through 2023, a period that included two major market crashes, accumulated significantly more wealth than an investor who attempted to time the market, typically because market timing investors tend to exit during downturns and re-enter after recovery, missing the highest return days that typically follow the lowest days. For most working professionals, the practical implementation is a contribution to a 401k or IRA, automated and set at a consistent percentage of income. The specific percentage matters less than the consistency. Starting at 10% and maintaining it through market cycles is superior to starting at 15%, stopping during a downturn, and attempting to restart later.